What's up everyone, Personality here, bringing you all the news from the fighting game community, whether it's from a casual or competitive perspective. Now, one of the more interesting things that came from the arrival of Street Fighter 6 was the early announcement of a $1 million prize tournament for the game. This is the official Street Fighter 6 Capcom Pro Tour event. So on the official website, they've listed official tournaments that would act as qualifying events that will then lead into the final event, which should be slated for a possible date in early 2024. Now, to see the company back the community from this standpoint, especially with this cash pool, I think sets a precedent for what official tournaments should shape up to be. Not just because of the prize pool, of course, but the very scope and scale of the competition is a very good showing from the developers and owners of the Street Fighter IP. However, there has been a recent rule from an upcoming official Capcom event that has led some in the community to feel a bit uneasy. So the San Diego Comic-Con is taking place on July 20th to the 23rd, so that's just a little bit later this week. Now, Capcom is hosting a tournament during this event, which is free to enter, but with a very nice consideration for the tournament's winner. It's a guaranteed spot for the Capcom Cup Last Chance qualifier, which includes hotel and airfare. So, relatively great incentive to enter this tournament, which should take place on the 21st of July. Of course, this is open only to attending individuals who have a 4-day pass at the Capcom booth. But reading further down their official sign-up page is where a little interesting rule on controllers can be found. Now, this rule speaks specifically to the controllers and what is allowed, and without them having to say it, what is banned. It seems that the PS5 console will be the go-to platform for this tourney, but interested players will not be able to walk with their own controllers. Instead, controllers will be provided, and it seems the choices are between the DualSense controller or the Razer Pantera Fight Stick. Now, this is okay for people who fight using pad or if they use DualSense controllers. And some players may have alternative fight sticks depending on the comfort they wanted from their preferred controller. But this leaves the hitbox, snackbox, or in general any leverless controller players out of the equation. Now, on the official Capcom website for the Capcom Pro Tour, there are no indications of provided controllers or any limitations, but most of the rules set there speaks to ensuring that the controllers are tournament legal and do not have turbo macros such as continuous inputs from one standard button press or SOCD inputs. And for those of you that don't know what SOCD means, well, first, it's an acronym for simultaneous opposing cardinal directions. To put it simply, because this topic could spawn a whole discussion on its own, so we're just going to put it very simply. Official tournaments would require neutral SOCDs, which means that if opposite inputs were to be put in at the same time, like left and right, then the resulting output would be the neutral position. The same would have to be applied to up and down. Now, there are some cases where customized controllers have last priority inputs, meaning that the last of the two inputted buttons would override the first input, resulting in an output of the recent button mashed. And this can present serious advantages for certain characters and certainly even players as well. Certain inputs can also be done by a shortcut and may result in quicker decisions that can be made when you're using these types of controllers. Now, of course, this problem has not been left unsolved, and much more controllers have become tournament legal and don't really pose an issue in that regard. Now, this is even funnier when you look at that most of the qualifiers for the Capcom Cup will be online tournaments. So, does it mean that somebody could use these controllers to qualify online, but then possibly when we get the Capcom World Pro Tour, finally underway that these controllers will be restricted. Now, the reason for this concern lies deeply in the hindrance of accessibility from players who would have been using their own controllers that were specifically made and adjusted to accommodate their needs. We could be overthinking this, and this just might be the case for this relatively small scale event at San Diego. But if this may factor into the much bigger Pro Tour, then Capcom and the FGC may have a potential hill to climb. It's also worth noting that the official Pro Cup rules were updated in May, while this rule set was published in July. Hopefully this does not affect the players who would have invested heavily into adjusting to their specific controller needs. The FGC somehow always seems to be at odds with officials when these things happen. It's almost as if some publishers are not fully conscious of the culture of the competitive community that were often left on their own to develop how their games were viewed in a competitive life. So, based on everything that is happening here, what do you guys think? Do you think that this is a serious issue? Should these developers be more welcoming to these controllers? Because the Razer Panthera stick is not an easy fight stick to actually get on, not only in terms of its availability, but its price point. And now you're seeing that we're having a limitation on what potentially may affect more people in the FGC, because at the competitive level, not many people use pads. You could still win with pads, but not many people use pads. So is Capcom a bit out of touch with their competitive fan base? Who knows? Comment below what you guys think, and of course, stay tuned for the next video. But until then, stay gaming.